Flora and Son. It's the newest film that's on Apple Plus. It's directed by John Carney, who gave us such musical wonders as Once, Sing Street, and Begin Again. 2 of those have been turned into musicals, so congratulations on that. And this stars Eve Hewson, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Jack Rayner. And it's, once again, about music, because John Carney, I think, believes that life can be changed through the power of music, and that's what he's trying to tell us through his numerous attempts at film. I actually like his films. Before I made this video, I had another friend of mine who's a film critic that posted on his own timeline and was encouraging people to see Flora and Son, and I was like, I liked it. It's also oddly my least favorite John Carney film, but then again, he's incredibly consistent as a director. So it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's just like, I don't know, pick who's your favorite. It's like saying, what's my least favorite Chris Nolan film? You know? It's still a pretty good film, like, all things considered. So even though this is my least favorite of 4 films, that's not really saying a lot, you know? So, but it is, and it's got some things that just rub me the wrong way. But the film mostly is about Flora, played by Eve Hewson, who is kind of like a free spirit. She's a woman who got pregnant when she was, as she will openly tell you multiple times in this film, it's not me, I'm not judging. If you got pregnant young, I'm not judging you. This is not me judging. This is the film. She would say she got pregnant too young. She made poor life decisions. She fell in love with a guy played by Jack Rayner, who was in a band, and you know, so music is how they connected, I guess you could say. I love one of his justifications in the film is he's like, when she's, you know, kind of making fun of him for not being like a massive musician, he's like, we open for Snow Patrol. You forget that. I was like, that's such a deep cut. Snow Patrol. Like, I love them for like 5 minutes back in like the mid 2000s. So, yeah, that gives you an idea of how big this band got. And it's very Irish. This is an Irish film. It's got Irish all over it, like Irish Institute and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's set appropriately in that area. But Flora and her son is Max, and he's a pain in the ass. He just is. But so is Flora. If we're being really honest, Flora's a pain in the ass. They're 2 pain in the asses that are constantly arguing and bickering. So what I liked about that was that it's a different dynamic than what we've seen, because it's 2 people who are heavily contentious all the time. And it's not necessarily one of those films where you feel like, oh, she's a great mother who is toiling away and trying to provide a better life for her son. We don't really ever see that from Flora. We just kind of see her struggling to keep her son from being a crackhead. You know, like she feels like he's like 2 steps away from jail, and is trying to just curb that attitude because he's 14. So let's try to change that. But his dad doesn't really seem to be helping a whole hell of a lot. But you know, what can you expect from somebody who used to be in a rock band, right? That's what we're picking up, I think, from John Carney. And so Flora, one day, she sees a guitar and decides to buy it because she thinks that maybe by getting Max interested in something that he will, you know, he won't do drugs. And turns out Max is not interested. Max is like, fuck you, fuck your guitar, I'm out of this bitch. And she just kind of yells at him, and that's kind of their relationship. And And then she's like, wait a minute, I have a guitar now. Maybe I should do something with this. So there's a really great sequence of her looking through almost like speed dating, but for guitar instructors. It's actually probably the best scene in the film. It's a scene I enjoyed quite a bit. Was her going through these, advertisements, promotional tutorials, whatever, from various guitar instructors until she finds the right one, who ends up being Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, Jeff, who lives in California, possibly also at home, but we don't know. I'm assuming he's also at home. He probably has a home. So maybe this is a spiritual sequel to a film John Carney didn't direct. I don't know. Anyway, Joseph Gordon-Levitt wasn't in that film, but he's in this one. So I like the casting of Joseph because I know that music means a lot to Joseph. He's appeared multiple times in things that have, to try to get that out to the world that music is important. So I think there's a shot here that he's actually playing guitar instead of faking it. There's a chance here that he's doing his own singing and all that kind of stuff. So I like when it's real and not faked. When you don't need a stand-in to be able to do things for you. So that's a plus. And he ends up giving her guitar lessons over the internet. And their relationship sort of expands and changes, and they become better people, different people, whatever. And do they fall in love? I don't know. That's up to you to decide. But this is called Flora and Son, not Flora and Jeff. So it's just kind of got a different vibe. It's really about how music changes this family, whether Max wants it to or not. And how it does that, and how it helps, and how it brings people together, and how Flora's choices sort of change things around. And just like his other movies, he writes some sort of interesting sort of singer-songwriter type material for this movie as well. And it's all fine. It's just, it feels like, yep, this is a John Carney film. I guess some of my problems with it just are in some of the interactions with Eve Hewson and her son. I get that she's supposed to feel like she doesn't have all the answers, and that she's not claiming to be the best mother in the world, and she's not claiming to have necessarily raised the best child in the world, but she has some interactions with him where they're just kind of like unnecessarily like fuck offish. Like there's one time where she kind of runs into him and she's just kind of like, well, I'm off. I don't need to hear about your problems. I'm leaving. She just kind of like just breaks off from conversations. It's almost like she assumes the worst is always going to happen, so she doesn't even bother sometimes. I think the film probably could have tried harder to make her feel like she was more invested, but I didn't feel like she was more invested. And the film instead tries to give her this like redemptive moment where she captains herself in a courtroom and just kind of stands up and tries to give this big speech. And I was like, I don't know if this is earned. I didn't really feel that from her character. At the same time, I appreciate the fact that not everybody has all the answers. Not everybody needs to be the perfect mother in every film. So, I almost would have preferred for her to not have all of the answers, for her relationship to be so strained with Max that she didn't know what to do, instead of it going for trying to manage both. It tries to kind of have both. It tries to have the I don't know what I'm doing, along with the I'm incredibly supportive. Look at me. And I don't know I don't know that it really pulled off. I, I just, it's just kind of like something that John's trying to mix and match and pull a little bit together to try to shape Eve Houston's character. But she's not necessarily the most likable person in the face of the planet here. I wasn't necessarily thinking to myself, oh wow, this poor soul has such a rough life and her son is just an asshole. I was kind of like, it's more like he's a chip off the old block. She's a very strong opinion person, and she also seems like she really doesn't give a fuck. And so the fact that her son doesn't really strike me as odd at all. And I think the film would have been stronger in the two of them finding a connection through that, instead of necessarily like the healing power of music and then trying to like give Eve Houston her moments as like the loving, doting mother, which you don't really see until the film requires it. It's a very, very odd film in terms of establishing and navigating this relationship and using music to do so. There are lots of choices that it does make that I really like. I like that that nothing that it does between Eve and Joseph are easy. That Flora and Jeff's relationship does not necessarily end up where you think it's going to be, where they're like in an airport and they're like running towards each other or something. And they're like, our long distance relationship is now a close one because we're running towards each other in some overly dramatic rom-com sequence. I'm glad he doesn't go there with that. I'm glad that that's not what he feels like is most important in his story. I'm also glad that Jack Reynor doesn't just like piece the hell out of this film. He could have written Jack as even more of a deadbeat dad than he actually is, but he doesn't. So that was appreciated. I kind of feel like Max is a little too easily redeemed. It's almost like he was pretty easily scared straight, It's just, you just need a little tweaking and then he's back. He's like, oh, sorry I was an asshole. The power of music has compelled me. Just some choices. I get what he's trying to do, but I think the themes and everything worked better in the other films. In Sing Street, for example, I think it just worked better how they used music, how they used music to connect people and to send a message out. I think it worked better. I think it worked better in Begin Again, and I think it worked better in Once. Once is basically a classic at this point. So I think this is fine. I think it's a good film. I think Eve Houston gives one hell of an entertaining performance. It's not going to go anywhere for the Oscars. However, I would not be surprised at all to hear her name called at Golden Globes, rounding out that Best Actress in a Comedy role. That's entirely possible because she is funny and it is a great performance of hers, and the film is sort of catered to her, with the three men all being sort of reduced to supporting her and propping up her character and giving her these extra dimensions by giving her different ways to interact with three different people, because she interacts with each character differently. So it really ends up being a great showcase for Eve Houston and her future as an actress as she continues to grow and continues to get work. I think this will serve as a launching pad, something that 10 years from now, when she's more well known than this, we'll look back on this film and be like, yeah, this was probably the turning point for her. And wouldn't be surprised at all if she got a Golden Globe nomination for this. But I just think John Carney's done this better before. if he's going to keep making relatively the same film and keep trying to convince us about the power of music, I think he also has to remember to write really compelling characters from the very beginning and make sure that their relationships are well defined, and don't be afraid to get into it outside of the music. Don't wait for the music to save the film. You can start doing that work ahead of time. This film is so damn focused on music that it kind of lets the other things just become afterthoughts in a film about music, which is unfortunate because I think there could have been much better character interactions and character growth and depth and analysis over the course of the film, instead of just, I learned a song, let's see how it changes the world. So I thought the audio description here was really good. There was one time where I didn't like it. And it was because it was confusing. There's a point in the film where they're doing a stage performance. What John Carney likes to do a lot in this film is Joseph is in California and everybody else is in Ireland, so not in the same place. And he likes to do these sort of like what if scenarios where like the power of music is pulling Joseph Gordon-Levitt through the through the internet to physically being present. So Joseph actually ends up shooting quite a bit of scenes where he's sharing a space with Eve. And there's sometimes it's pretty clear what's going on because in most of those encounters, she starts off doing the lesson online, and then you get the fact that he didn't just teleport magically to her. I guess this is somewhat spoilery, but there is a point in the film where she goes on stage to perform, and the film sort of lists who's on stage ready to perform with her, and Jeff is one of the people who is on stage, but the film kind of lists him as being just on stage with everyone else. It's not until she speaks later on and acknowledges that he's back in California that we realize that, oh, he's on a tablet or something. But I would have appreciated in that moment just knowing straight up that Jeff was on a tablet or a laptop or a phone. I'm still not even really sure what he was on because I wasn't given that kind of description. You know, I was just given Jeff is on stage. How is he on stage? How are they, for that sort of a performance? That's a tough performance to have, to be accompanied by somebody over the internet that many miles away. You know, I mean, and to get like quality sound out of that, that's not hard. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do. So, clarity, I guess, would be what I was looking for this. So, while I thought it did a mostly good job, I can't say that it was perfect. So, yeah, I would have just been a little bit more obvious about these choices because John Carney keeps trying to like slowly teleport the two together, and Eve does talk about wanting to go out and visit Joseph in California. So in that moment I was like, oh shit, did he come out to her? And is this a surprise? Is he here? Oh no, he's still on. Okay. It was just, I feel like that could have been answered a lot easier. Instead I was confused. So, but I like John Carney films, and even though it seems like I was really harsh on this film, I gotta say, he does this thing really well. He does this healing power of music thing pretty well. This is just probably the least interesting thing he's done. However, he is incredibly consistent at being able. This is his niche. If John Carney directed like a bank heist thriller and there was no music involved, I'd be concerned. But as long as he's just going to keep making the same film over and over, he's just going to be like a Gary Marshall who just becomes really good in their own wheelhouse. You know, this is what they do. This is their thing. This is what they make movies about. You know, when Martin Scorsese makes a mobster movie, we get really excited. We're like, that's going to be good because he knows how to do that. We've seen him do it before. He's going to do it again. So, yeah. Eve Hewson is fantastic and definitely the reason to watch this. And it's not long. So, and I like the music. I think people will like this generally. I just wish it could have gone a little bit deeper and just involved a little bit more in the relationships, just without necessarily relying 100% on the power of music. So I'm gonna give Flora and Son a B+. Yeah, there you go. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thanks for subscribing. If you're not a subscriber, please click subscribe because I've got 99 children and I haven't been able to feed any of them. Ever. This is not paying very well. I'm just kidding. I don't have 99 children. I actually have 98. So we're hoping for a 99th, but we can't afford to feed it. So I'm just kidding. None of that exists. Or does it? I have a website, MacTheMovieGuy.com, and you can follow me on X, Instagram, or Threads at MacTheMovieGuy. You can go to the audio description project, adp.azb.org. It'll let you know what has audio description and where you can watch it. And you can go to the ADNA.org where you can look up your favorite films and television shows and see who's doing the narration. That's it for me today. I will watch something else and see you guys on the other side.